Carlsen with the weirdest opening. The game between Alireza Firouzja and Magnus Carlsen, which was played in the FX Crypto Cup, was one of the strangest ever played between two super grandmasters. On the third move, Magnus brought out his queen to a 5, and this was the first of a string of really strange, or when you lose the game, there's strange decisions. When you win the game, you're a creative, brilliant genius. But we're going to see Magnus just kind of. If your opponents ever do weird stuff, here's kind of the blueprints. You develop your stuff, you get castled, and here's how Alireza was able to beat Magnus today. Now I've also added the evil bar. You can see it right here. If you guys do like it, a lot of people said in the comments they wanted an evil bar. There it is. If you like it, let me know in the comments below. We'll keep it for future videos. Now here's how we got to our position today. It was an e4 to 6 opening. Card count, of course, knight 3, 5, knight to 3. This is the 2 knights variation. This is very popular. And then we saw queen to a 5. And my mind even just wants to say knight because you're not supposed to be bringing out your queen on move 3, like it doesn't make any sense. And if there's any point to this weird move, it's that if white were to move this pawn, for example, then at least there would be a pin on this knight, so black would have the opportunity to take on e4, and maybe you can hope that if white ever castles on the king's side at some point, the queen might be swinging over for some sort of king side attack. Something like this might be possible, but what really happened in this game is white was very calm about it and played bishop to e2, just intending on developing the piece, getting castled, and I'll do things in the center later. Now we saw takes on e4, knight takes e4, bishop to 5, knight to 3, bishop goes back to e6, and white just gets castled. And this is exactly what you're supposed to do when your opponent has wasted a little bit of time, and then what generally happens is at some point now in the early middle game, as soon as you've gotten castled, you're going to look for ways to try to open the center, because the black king is actually a long ways away from potentially getting castled, and either you have to go on the queen side where you've already moved a pawn on the c6. So maybe you'll be not as safe over there, but if you want to go on the king's side, you have a lot of work to do. You got a lot of pieces you got to get out of the way, so knight to 7 is what was played, maybe an indication that black does want to castle on the queen's side, but that's not at all what happened in this game. We saw pawn to 4 taking the center e6, and now the first non-developing move, knight to 4, and this is a good move, as well as you could probably play c4, intending on pushing in the center. You can probably develop the bishop right away if you want, but Alireza's choice was to play knight e4, just simply going after the bishop pair, and now we saw bishop to 6, pawn to c4. I'm very serious now about playing pawn to 5, and now we see another very strange decision by Magnus. He plays queen all the way back to 8, and he's attacking this knight, but he's also kind of begging for white to punish him tactically here. Now, I'm assuming neither player actually saw the tactical sequence that could occur here, and they probably were both thinking about knight takes g6, which is black's idea, opening up this e-file, but now that you got the evil bar, you're probably wondering, like, why is it gone up a little bit? It's up to about +1 over here for white. What is that all about? Well, in this position, white has this tactical opportunity of playing pawn to 5, ignoring black's threat, and just continuing with the strategic plan that he's been working up for, because if you are to take here, white is just going to be taking on e6, and all of a sudden, both of these pieces come under fire, and this is going to be very bad for black. So instead, after queen to 8, we saw takes on 6 takes, and now pawn to 5, and here is where Magnus gets to kind of reveal his plan. The whole point behind queen to 8, and you're kind of wasting time going back and forth, is that he's going to move the queen for a third time in order to try to get some sort of checkmating attack. And at first, it actually looks a little bit dangerous because we're going to have to play pawn to a3, and maybe you're worried that you might be losing this knight on 3. But it turns out that white is not really bothered at all. White doesn't feel the need to do anything about that knight for quite a long time here, and if you were to take right away, for example, you could end up in just a lot of trouble. You could see the bar just shifting there. Because if you are to just take blah, white is going to be able to continue to develop, and the problem for black here is that the center is going to open up. White is going to be able to take one of these on the next move, and you're already in a lot of danger here with black, so there's no opportunity to take that knight, so white was fully justified and just continuing to play pawn to 5, and now we see another weird decision. Magnus decides to take on 5 with the e-pawn. Now, the traditional wisdom would be that if your king is stuck in the center, what you want to do is you want to close the e-file, because if you take this way, you're actually inviting white to bring a rook to the e-file at some moment and potentially get some sort of attack. So perhaps the more traditional way would be to take with the c-pawn instead, and after this recapture, just keep the e-file shut at all costs and just play pawn to e5, even if it makes your bishop look kind of dumb, and then try and get your knight out and get castled and just see ya. If you can get to an acceptable middle game, but instead, I think Magnus here already had some sort of weird ideas of what he was going to do with his king. in a position like this because after takes he plays c5 and he shuts down the c file, so that's kind of interesting. Okay, now we see pawn to f4, which is actually a very, very good move that turns out to work out well for white in the future. The idea is to be able to bring this rook up to a 3, so now if black gets greedy and decides to take this pawn, which is not what happens, we would see this position on the board and the rook would be coming to a 3, and now the rook is able to swing over, but also almost wherever this queen goes, you're running into the fact that maybe you're going to be hit with some of the other rooks. It's all kind of getting difficult from black, and white is going to be able to develop the pieces rapidly. So that's why we saw Magnus not tempted to try to win a pawn in this position, but instead we saw this move pawn to f5, and this is the one that makes the evil bar kind of skyrocket, kind of a weird decision. You might have thought that Magnus was going to the castle on the queen's side, but I believe that he already has some sort of idea that the king will make some sort of weird maneuvering to get safe. Perhaps he is picturing some kind of pawn structure like this, where the king is somehow safe over on the queen's side and white will never be able to break through. Now the queen moves to x3, making a few precise moves to attack the rook while also planning to eventually infiltrate the queen's side. Black eventually moves the queen to x7, where the entire queenside collapses, and Magnus decides to concede. I don't know. It was just kind of a strange game. The queen moved to a5 and a Caro-Can, but that move didn't quite work, and black had some strange kingside decisions. Did you like it? Tell us what you think of the video in the comments section below, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more interesting videos.